We're fearlessly talking about the biggest stories that matter to you the most. Breaking news, John Calipari is finalizing a 5-year deal to become the Arkansas Razorbacks' next head coach, covering college sports like no one else. The biggest guests in sports. We now welcome in Hall of Famer Jim Calhoun.
Such a pride I had, I came to Connecticut.
The legend, Tim Tebow, joins us.
We'll run it back. I like it.
The legend, Herschel Walker. Welcome in, everybody. Sunday morning edition, Air Torres Sports Podcast. I'm your host, Air Torres. Hope everybody's doing well. Hope everybody's having a great day. Last week we did the Sunday morning edition. I thought it actually worked out pretty well. We could go later on in the day on Sunday. I know there's a couple college hoops games on Sundays, but bottom line is most of the heavy action is on Saturdays. By Sunday nighttime, you guys just want to watch football. I just want to watch football. By the way, I will be hosting Fox Sports Radio 8 p.m. Eastern tonight after the games if you want to tune in. So the point I'm trying to make is we're going to spend the next, 30, 35, 40 minutes talking a lot of college hoops from Saturday afternoon and Saturday evening. And boy, oh boy, oh boy, what a day of college hoops it was. We're going to open, obviously, the two big games. We all know Auburn survives Tennessee. Houston in double overtime. One of the most improbable victories that we have ever seen. We're going to discuss all of that. We will discuss, by the way, Johni Broome versus Cooper Flagg, National Player of the Year. I'll be kind of honest. I think that's a little bit of a manufactured debate. I think the answer is kind of pretty obvious as far as I'm concerned. And we will wrap. Kentucky loses to Vandy. Is this a program that is regressing here as we hit February? And we'll do a couple other odds and ends from across college basketball. But to me, those were the three big games. Auburn versus Tennessee, Houston versus Kansas, Kentucky losing to Vandy. So boy, oh boy, we have a busy show. Should mention, by the way, if you do listen on podcast, I'll probably do a little short segment on the NFL games after they go final on Sunday night. It's just a thought process being that everybody wants football content come Monday, so we'll probably have a little bit of that. By the way, exciting week on the pod. We're going to have a very special guest on Monday night, so make sure you're tuned in for that. Before we get started, a couple quick reminders. One, make sure that you are subscribed to the Air Torres Pod YouTube channel. New clips, new videos going up every single day on YouTube. We appreciate your support. By the way, we are, in fact, closing in on 50,000 subscribers. This is the dream, folks. This is what we've been working for since I was a little kid growing up in central Connecticut. I said, Mom and Dad, I don't want to be an astronaut. I don't want to be a firefighter. I don't want to be president of the United States. I want 50,000 subscribers on YouTube. They didn't know what that meant because YouTube didn't exist, but the point remains. We need to get to 50K. Cannot do it without all of you. So please make sure to do that. Also, make sure you're subscribed on Apple, Spotify, Amazon Music, wherever you get your music. You want to leave a 5-star rating. You want to leave a review. That really would go a long way. All right. Also, before we get started, speaking of going a long way, you know what goes a long way when you're hungry? Cauli Puffs and CauliPuffs.com. Okay, so I've told you about Cauli Puffs. They are our presenting sponsor. We love working with them, and it's the new year. You're trying to be healthy. You're trying to be responsible, trying to eat better, trying to drink less, trying to not get so mad about your team unless you're an Auburn fan because they never lose. And so you're trying to be healthy in 2025, and there's no better way to start than with Cauli Puffs. Okay, so Cauli Puffs are the new age health food snack in your grocery aisle. Put away all the crappy chips, crappy Fritos, crappy Doritos, and go ahead and get yourself something that is healthy but delicious. Family-owned company, not far from where I live. Joey, no different than you and I. Sports fan, football fan, Rams season ticket holder. And he was sitting around one day on the couch watching games and said, I need something that is healthy, but darn it, do I need something that's delicious as well. I need something that I'm going to like, but I need something that my kids are going to like as well. And that's how he came up with Cauli Puffs. These are the new age snack, as I said, baked, not fried, avocado oil, no grease, healthy ingredients. And at this point, you don't need Torres to tell you about it. I've told you enough about it. All you got to do for more information, visit CauliPuffs.com. That's CauliPuffs.com, CauliPuffs.com. You can also get them on Amazon.com. Just search Amazon and wherever you search on Amazon, you'll find Cauli Puffs. They're not hard to find. So we appreciate Cauli Puffs support. They are an incredible partner. and it is an awesome, awesome, awesome time to be working with them. They actually have company-wide some big news coming. I don't want to spoil it for them, but was texting with them throughout the weekend. CawleyPuffs.com. Again, CawleyPuffs.com. With that said, it's a Sunday morning. There's a lot of college hoops to react to. There is no more time to waste. So let's go ahead and get to the topic of the day. Topic of the day, listen, there were two super marquee games. I mean, this was the first Saturday without football basically in forever, right? Since middle of August, since pre-week 0. And credit as always, the TV partners came through. Two super marquee matchups on Saturday. We had Kansas-Houston about, 6:30 or so Eastern time, followed by Auburn against Tennessee, 8:30 Eastern, 7:30 Pacific. Neville Arena was rocking. And so let's go ahead and dive in. I do want to get to the second game first, where Auburn, they survive. It was a game that, listen, first of all, a lot of hype, two top 10 teams, the number one offense in America, according to all the advanced analytics, the number one defense in America, according to all the advanced analytics. Well, guess what? The game was played on Tennessee's terms as the final score in this one, 53-51. It shows you that it wasn't the prettiest game, but Auburn gets the victory. And Auburn, in my opinion, again, it continues to separate itself from the rest of the sport. And I'll be honest, I think their star player, Johni Broome, is separating himself in the National Player of the Year conversation. So when I look at this game, a couple things stand out. Listen, let me start by saying this. I love college hoops. Nobody loves college hoops more than Torres. But even I got to admit, little bit of sore sight for the eyes. Okay, like I said, 53-51 was the final score. Neither team shot above 32% from the field. Let me make sure that I have my math right on this. The two teams combined to shoot 7 of 42 from 3. Not great at math, but that means only 1 of 6 went in. That's well under 20% combined for the two teams. 18% for Tennessee, 15% for Auburn. It was ugly. It was, listen, I'll tell you this. You know how I know it was a little bit of a tough game to watch? After the game, both Auburn fans and Tennessee fans were frustrated with the refereeing. Our Torres on the Vols account, our Torres on Auburn account, we're both saying the refs sucked. Get us out of there. But Auburn finds a way to win. And Auburn finds a way to win in large part because of the return of their star player, Johni Broome. And so I want to go ahead and get into this. But first of all, Johni Broome, this is an unbelievable story. Okay, remember about 3 weeks ago, what was it? About 3 weeks ago, I think it was the Ohio State game, separates his shoulder in the middle of the game, leaves the game. You question if he's going to be able, he sits out the next game against Georgia State. Auburn is playing Purdue the following game. And you sit there and say, like, okay, is he going to miss this Purdue game? What's going to happen? I know. Comes back, plays in the Purdue game. This was a few weeks ago. Finishes that game with 23 points and 11 boards against a team in Purdue that is currently in second place in the Big Ten, absolutely dominated. Auburn beats them by 18 points. But then a few weeks ago, it was literally 2 weeks ago, that Johni Broome has that nasty, nasty, nasty ankle sprain against South Carolina. He's helped off the court. I'll be honest, I saw it live. It felt season-ending to me. You then find out that it's just a sprain. It won't require surgery. But you start talking about, is he going to be out 3 weeks, 4 weeks, a month? Auburn isn't going to rush him back. Well, guess what? He misses 2 games. And by the way, we said this at the time. If you remember, we talked about this. I said, Auburn actually, all things considered, in the SEC this year, Auburn actually got a little bit of a scheduling break. 2 manageable games, Mississippi State at home, and then of course they then went on the road to play Georgia. I thought that was a manageable stretch. Then they get a full week off. I assumed he wasn't going to play the Tennessee game. They play at LSU. I thought he would return after that. So the fact that he comes back after what we thought could be a season-ending injury, an ankle sprain that for most people takes a month to come back from. Listen, I'm a UConn guy. Love my Huskies. Liam McNeely sprained his ankle on Jan 1, okay? He sprained it a full 2 weeks before Johni Broome did, and he has not yet come back. And I'm not criticizing Liam McNeely. I'm just saying that, Johni Broome has some tiger blood in him, literally and figuratively, because he comes back after less than 2 weeks. Bruce Pearl said after the game, he wasn't sure. Johni Broome wasn't even practicing until Tuesday or Wednesday of this week. They weren't sure he was going to go. The way that I read Bruce Pearl's comments was that basically he was questioning whether he should even put him in. Broome wanted to play. Broome plays and finishes in this game off the bench with 33 minutes played, 16 points, 13 rebounds. I'll call it the big defensive play at the end of the game. Tennessee fans think there was a foul, but I bring it up because it was an unbelievable effort from Johni Broome as Auburn gets the win. And with it, let me say this. Listen, I don't think there are like a ton of super intriguing conversations in college basketball. And I love college basketball, but it's kind of a game-to-game, week-to-week sport. And I don't think there's a lot of like conversations that transcend, fan base to fan base. Like if you're a Kentucky fan, you follow Kentucky. If you're an Auburn fan, you follow Auburn. If you're a Duke fan, you follow Duke. Okay. But I do think there is an interesting conversation about the National Player of the Year going on. Johni Broome on one side, Cooper Flagg on the other. And it's interesting to me because when Johni Broome got hurt, I kind of felt like everyone in the media was rushing to hand the Player of the Year award to Cooper Flagg under the assumption that Johni Broome was going to be out some crazy extended period of time. And I remember thinking at the time, like, this feels crazy to me. Like, are we rushing to judgment? And I think part of it is, look, Cooper Flagg's an amazing player with an amazing season. I'll also say this. I think a lot of college basketball media is dying for Cooper Flagg to be and feel more relevant than he is. Oh, my God, I'm going to get crushed for that. All the college hoops nerds are going to say, what the hell am I talking about? Cooper Flagg's amazing, okay? But I don't feel like it has felt as big as everybody thought it was going to be in the preseason. This was a kid, of course, that played with Team USA. This was a kid, of course, that was a headline grabber in August. And I think we all thought this was going to be Zion 2.0. Well, Cooper Flagg is a different player. In some ways, he's been just as good. But when Johni Broome got hurt, it felt like everybody was like, well, just Cooper Flagg's now the National Player of the Year frontrunner. And I'm like, why? Let's see how long Johni Broome misses. And so as we now get into February, as Johni Broome is now back, I actually think Johni Broome should be considered the overwhelming favorite to win the National Player of the Year. It's not a knock on Cooper Flagg. I understand they played head-to-head. I understand Cooper Flagg's team won. But to me, this feels like a manufactured debate because everybody in the media wants Cooper Flagg to be more awesome than he already is, and he's already awesome. But when I look at Johni Broome, here's the bottom line. First of all, Auburn as a team, and I know this is not a team award, but this guy is the heart and soul of what I believe is far and away the best team in college basketball. And I know what people say, Torres, they lost to Duke. How can you say they're the best team by far? Well, listen, nobody's going undefeated. Even UConn last year, which we all agree was one of the best teams of the modern era, they lost 3 times, okay? Nobody's going undefeated. They played Duke on the road. This is Auburn now. And in that game, Johni Broome was awesome. Cooper Flagg was awesome. The reason Duke won that game wasn't Cooper Flagg. It wasn't because Johni Broome stunk. It was because Isaiah Evans came off the bench, wasn't even playing in the previous couple games, had 18 points, 6 3-pointers made. So, yes, I understand they played. I don't really care that Auburn lost a singular game to Duke on a true road environment. And instead, to me, it's actually the exact opposite. Is if you look at the totality of Auburn's schedule, again, they are trending to have one of the greatest seasons we've ever seen, okay? Listen, I know that sounds like hyperbole. I know there's a lot of games left to be played. It doesn't change the fact that what they're doing is absolutely incredible. 18-1 overall. No other power conference team has fewer than 2 losses. Beyond that, I said this last week, 11-1 in quad 1 games. Okay, so again, quad 1 are the best wins you can possibly have. I looked it up. A great resume on Selection Sunday is like 12-13 quad 1 wins. Auburn has 11. It's not even February, and they still have what? 12 regular season games plus 3 games maybe in the SEC tournament. It's like they're going to put together what could go down as a historic resume, and we'll see what happens if they get there. But beyond that, Broome to me has been the biggest in the best games all season long. First of all, again, the schedule is bananas. I was looking this up for fun. So yes, Auburn did lose to Duke, okay? But how about this right now? So look at the top 25 rankings in the AP. Auburn has beaten the number 3 team in the country, Iowa State. Johni Broome was awesome in that game. They have beaten the number 6 team in the country, Tennessee, on Saturday night. Johni Broome was awesome in that game. They beat the number 7 team in the country, Houston. Johni Broome was awesome in that game. They beat the number 11 team in the country, Purdue. Johni Broome was awesome in that game. So the top 11 teams, Auburn has beaten 4 of them, and Johni Broome has been incredible. By the way, it shows you how deep the SEC is because Auburn still has 3 games left against teams currently in the top 10. Actually, more than 3, but they play Kentucky, they play Alabama twice, and they also play Florida. So there's still a lot of big games left on that schedule. But they are trending to go down as one of the best regular season teams we've ever seen. We'll see what it relates to in the postseason. And this guy is the heart and soul of that team. And again, he plays his best in all of the biggest games for Auburn. 16-13 on Saturday night against Tennessee. They don't win without him. 23-11, as I said, against Purdue. 21-20 against Ohio State. 20-12 at Duke. 23-19 against UNC. 21-10 against Iowa State. You go on and on down the list. This is incredible. By the way, 20-9 against Houston early in the season. And so, listen, there's still a lot of basketball left to be played, but he is playing great in Auburn's biggest games. They are playing statistically one of the toughest schedules in college basketball, and we'll see how the rest of the season unfolds. I get it. I get that Cooper Flagg is fun. I get that he's hype. But first of all, Cooper Flagg, and again, it sounds like I'm disrespecting him. I'm just stating facts. Their biggest games, he wasn't great. He was good against Auburn, was not good against Kansas. I was at that game. And then against Kentucky, he had the big turnovers late that cost them the game. So again, we're talking nuance here. By the way, the other thing with Johni Broome, because Tennessee fans, of course, were, he's a free throw merchant. He's Zach Edey 2.0. Johni Broome shoots 4 free throws a game. Johni Broome shot 3 free throws against Tennessee. Johni Broome is a 60% three-point free throw shooter. So the reason I bring it up, because Zach Edey last year, I looked it up, shot 11 free throws per game. Johni Broome shooting 4. So don't tell me he just draws dumb fouls and he gets lucky and all that stuff. No. He is having an incredible year. Auburn is having an incredible year. To me, he is the runaway national player of the year. I actually think it's a manufactured debate right now. I think Broome is the overwhelming favorite. We still got 5 weeks left of the regular season. It's not too early to kind of see where things go, but to me, he should be considered the favorite for the national player of the year. All right, let's go ahead and take a quick break. When we come back, I do want to talk about some of the other stories in college hoops. Houston won statistically one of the wildest games we've ever seen. And then the big question, is Kentucky regressing? Let's take a quick break. We'll be right back. All right, we're going to get back to the show in a minute. But before we do, many of you ask me all the time, Torres, what can I do to help support the show? You give me hours and hours and hours of content every single week. What can I do to help you? Well, I'll tell you what, do me a quick favor. Check out the Aaron Torres Media merchandise store for all of your team-specific shirts, hats, and more, all available at aarontorresonline.com/merchandise. A lot of you wondering, Torres, what can I get in that merch store? Well, first of all, we got our brand new Hope and Pope Kentucky basketball t-shirts. That's right. Mark Pope has arrived. He is here to save the day. Get your Hope and Pope t-shirts there. Also, Arkansas fans, the Big Pig Invasion is here. You can get your tees there. Basketball School Alabama shirts. Mora Hurley 2024 UConn shirts for your tailgates at Rentschler Field, your games at the XL Center or Gamble. And oh, by the way, your Mike effing Woodson gear for Indiana. If you love football, we got you covered too. We got more Dion shirts and hats than we even know what to do with. The freeze warning has hit the plains. Auburn fans, grab your freeze warning tees now. And of course, our new era, new rules shirt applies to Nebraska football and its incredible fan base. We have more coming for the fall, plenty in stock right now. So make sure to check out the Aaron Torres Media merch store at aarontorresonline.com/merchandise. And you can always hit me up with any questions. Aaron Torres Podcast. All right, everybody. I am back. Good to be back. So before we get to some of the other results, including an improbable win with Houston, let's go ahead and get to a couple intriguing questions. DDDH 1950 says, you're ignoring Iowa State's Curtis Jones as player of the year candidate. Is it because ESPN buries games on Big 12 games on ESPN Plus? So first of all, let me start by saying this. I think it is a very salient point that the Big 12 has just entirely too many games on ESPN Plus. And it was funny, even like Arizona yesterday, I was looking for their game, and it's just like, why can't I not find? Oh, it's on ESPN Plus. And so I understand that right now. Iowa State, frankly, probably isn't getting the love that they deserve. They probably aren't getting the credit that they deserve. I do think it's and by the way, you said burying them in the conversation. I mean, there's other players in the conversation, but it feels like right now those are the two very obvious guys in terms of the National Player of the Year. So with Curtis Jones, listen, what he's doing is absolutely incredible. Iowa State is awesome. He has been, I think, one of the revelations of college basketball. 19 points per game, 40% three-point shooting, was on the bench, is now a starter. And obviously was amazing on Saturday against Arizona State with 33 points. Good news for Iowa State. They have plenty of marquee games left starting on Monday night, 10:30 Eastern with Arizona. But I just sit there and say, I think it's a little early to put him in the Cooper Flagg, Johni Broome conversation. But just because I didn't mention him doesn't mean there aren't other candidates. It just means that those are the two right now. But I really feel like, honestly, those are the top. I think that's the one right there going forward. All right, let's go ahead and keep the conversation going. And let's switch gears to the other big game on Saturday. It was, of course, Auburn. We just talked Auburn. What am I talking about? It was actually in Iowa State's conference, the Big 12, and it was a game between Houston and Kansas. Interesting game. I think even just coming in, it was an interesting game. Houston, remember, this was a team that actually started the year really slow, was 4-3 at one point. They came into Saturday 15-3, meaning I'm not great at math. That means they won 11 in a row. But if you kind of looked at the schedule for Houston, kind of beat up on more the bottom parts of the Big 12 so far, beat a bad Kansas State team, beat a bad team, some of the teams that are more inferior. Listen, the schedule is going to get tougher for them. But I think it was fair to kind of ask, like, who have they played? How good have they played? All that good stuff. Kansas kind of the opposite. They've definitely played more marquee games, including at Iowa State. They're playing good, but not great. Bill Self, I thought he had some very interesting comments after the loss to Iowa State, basically saying that team knows how to compete for 40 minutes and we don't. Well, I'll tell you what, Kansas not only competed for 40 minutes, they competed for 50 minutes, and it was a wild game because this is one of the craziest results that I think we could ever really talk about. You know that Kansas led this game by 6 points with the ball, with a minute to go in overtime, and let me take that back. Let me start over. Kansas led with the ball by 6 with 18 seconds to go and ended up losing this game in double overtime. That lead was in overtime. This was one of the most improbable comebacks ever, and that's not hyperbole. That's literally one of the most improbable comebacks ever. So let's go ahead and break this all down. Okay, so first of all, again, we know it was at stake for both teams. And really, it was just a crazy, crazy, crazy game. Houston was great in the first half, or Kansas was great in the first half. Houston makes a run. Kansas feels like they're in control. I thought it was interesting at the end of the game. Houston had the ball down 2. Kansas fouled them. Bill Self kind of said after the game he didn't intentionally foul, but it kind of looked in real time like it was an intentional foul. The reason being Houston had a 53% three-point free throw shooter in Jawan Roberts going to the foul line. Again, he claimed it didn't happen, but a 53% free throw shooter made both. We go to overtime, and then this is where the craziness happens. Okay, like I said, Kansas, as I said, was up by 6 points with 18 seconds to go and the ball. This was according to I saw this stat, ESPN Stats and Info. Okay, Jared Burson tweeted, per KenPom, Houston had a 0.4 chance to win when Kansas had the ball with a 6-point lead and under 20 seconds to go. Well, what ends up happening? They foul DeJuan Harris. He misses 2 free throws, get the ball back, make a 3. Then they force a turnover, make a three with under 5 seconds to go to force double overtime, where they get the win. So again, they were up. Houston trailed by 6 points with under 20 seconds to go in overtime and finds a way to force a double overtime where they win to pay off the tease on that Jared Burson tweet. Jared Burson, formerly of ESPN Stats and Info. As I said, Houston had a 0.4 chance to win when Kansas had the ball and a 6-point lead with 20 seconds in the first OT. That makes Houston's eventual win the most unlikely in any of the 1,487 games between AP top 25 teams over the last 15 seasons. In other words, statistically, it was the craziest comeback featuring 2 top 25 teams in nearly 2 decades. So it shows you how crazy the game was. It shows you the result. It shows you, by the way, how good the Big 12 is. Listen, the SEC is the best conference of college basketball, but I don't want to undersell how good the Big 12 is, but these are 2 really good teams. And as we start to look at kind of the big picture stuff in this game, you know, I would say, like, for me, it's hard to overreact to this game. It's hard for me to sit there and yell and scream, and Kansas this and Kansas that. It's like Kansas was up against the top 10 team by 6 points with 20 seconds to go, and they didn't win. It sucks. It stings. You have to win that game, but it isn't some like crazy indictment that they're the worst team that's ever played basketball. And it's funny because, you know, I go even back to when Kansas lost to Iowa State. And what was interesting about that game was, if you remember, after the game, Bill Self was very critical. We don't know how to close. That team knows how to win. We don't, blah, 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 this and that. And after this game, like, he kind of said the same thing. He's like, we control large stretches. Let's not undersell what we did. We have to get better. This league is tough. But this wasn't code red, siren, 4-alarm fire, okay? So Kansas does not get the win. But we got to talk about Houston because, you know, I tweeted this out the other day, and I truly believe this with Houston. I think we are completely underappreciating what the heck Houston is doing in the Big 12 right now, okay? Let's go through some quick history on Houston. We'll circle back to the tweet because Houston, remember, they were accomplishing incredible things in the AAC. This was the American Athletic Conference 3-4 years ago, okay? So they were, doing great things in that league, okay? And I bring it up because they were doing even historic things. Made a Final Four in 2021. That was the COVID bubble year, but that was the year Gonzaga and Baylor were the 2 best teams. Houston was in that Final Four. The next year, they lose a ton of players. They go to the Elite Eight where they lose to Villanova in the Elite Eight. By the way, that was the famous game where me and JJ Redick started beefing on Twitter. And when I say beefing on Twitter, I just mean I tweeted something factually correct. JJ Redick tried to punk me. I ended up being right. That's another conversation for another day, okay? But then they have another run the following year where they get a number 1 seed. But last year, they come to the Big 12. And I don't want to overstate this and act like it's the greatest achievement. But remember, Big 12 is either the best conference or the second best conference of college basketball every single year. And I do think there were some questions about just how good would this team be in this conference now that they were leaving the AAC. Well, I think it's safe to say they're doing pretty okay because how about this? Last year, they win the regular season title in the AAC or in the Big 12 in their first year. Just walk in, dominate the league in the first year. Remember, by the way, it's also kind of worth noting, which is interesting. They started 0-2 in the league, or 1-2 in the league, excuse me, and won 14 out of their next 15 a season ago. They win the regular season title. They won 7 straight to close the regular season in league play. They've won now 8 straight to open league play in 2024-2025. So as we speak, Houston just walked into the second toughest conference in college basketball. Won the regular season in year 1, including 14 wins in their last 15 games. That includes a 7-game win streak to end the regular season. As you can see on the screen here, thank you, Bruce and Matt. They have now won 17 straight games overall in the league and are in sole possession of first place here in their second year in the Big 12. And so, listen, I know it was an improbable win. I know that there are tough games left on the schedule. They have to play Kansas again at home. They have to go to Arizona. They have Iowa State. They have to go to Texas Tech, which is a really tough place to play. 2 games against Texas Tech total. But I just don't think that we should undersell what this program is doing, going into what was last year the toughest conference in college basketball, winning in the regular season, and now a 17-game win streak in a power conference that's unbelievable. That includes 2 wins over Kansas, including one dating back to last year, a win at Flagg Fieldhouse. I think we got to give him a ton of credit. By the way, I'll say this. Remember who Torres' preseason national championship pick was? Yeah, it was the Houston Cougars, baby. You know Torres loves those Cougars. Love those Cougars. Well, guess what? Last night, I thought Saturday was the first time, even though it could have gone either way. I thought that was the first time that I was like, oh, they actually are good enough to win the championship. Take a quick water break. Hold on one second. All right, people, let's switch gears because I do want to talk about another game that I think it's worth having a conversation about. It is the team that we talk about a lot here on the Aaron Torres Pod YouTube channel. It is the Kentucky Wildcats, who in SEC play, obviously the SEC is just a gauntlet, but kind of an interesting kind of scheduling deal. Remember, Kentucky had a week off. They lost to Alabama at home last week. And it was kind of one of those things. Okay, I think we did a reaction on this show last Sunday morning. And I think we all kind of sat there and said, okay, we're not going to overreact. Alabama is the number 1 scoring offense in college basketball. They're a great team. They're a national championship contender. When Kentucky has a week off, Kentucky goes and plays what I would argue is maybe their worst game of the season, certainly their worst half of the season. And I got to say it, Kentucky kind of feels like they're sort of regressing, kind of sort of feels like they hit a wall. I'm not ready to do anything negative to Mark Pope, but I think some of the goodwill is slipping away as Kentucky has now lost a second straight SEC game to fall to 3-3 in the SEC, 14-5 overall. And again, I think there's 2 simple things to talk about. One is this team regressing, and there are some big picture issues that are really emerging, okay? First of all, before we even get to Kentucky, I'd be remiss. I don't want to undersell what Vanderbilt is doing. Vandy, for years, has struggled. They were not good in the Jerry Stackhouse era. And it's interesting. Like, you kind of wondered in the NIL portal era, is this just a program that's never going to be relevant in the SEC again? Everybody's got money. Everybody can get players. Vandy's got academic requirements that are a little bit different than basically everybody else in the SEC. Is this just a team that time has passed by and they'll never be good again? Well, as it turns out, you just need the right coach. But even this year, I'll say this, is like they went 12-1 in the out of conference. And I kind of said, okay, like that's great. But again, are they really that good? Or was it just kind of a week out of conference schedule? They're improved, but they'll be kind of a, team in the 13-16 range in the SEC. Well, I think it's safe to say that ain't going to be the case because for the second time in the last 2 Saturdays, they get a big home win. Last week it was against Kentucky, or last week it was against Tennessee. This week it was against Kentucky. For Kentucky in this game, or for Vandy in this game, let's go ahead and give them credit. They dominated the first half. I think it was the worst half period that Kentucky has played, but don't think we should undersell what Vandy did, jumping out to the 14-point halftime lead. The Edwards kid was phenomenal. 18 points for him. Jason Edwards on 6 of 11 shooting from the field. He was phenomenal, as I said, in this game. Mark Pope actually addressed it after. He's like, we knew he was good. We didn't know he was quite that good. So don't want to undersell Vandy, who is now 14-3, if my math is 16-4, excuse me. I don't know where I got 14-3. 16-4, win over Tennessee, win over Kentucky, 4-3 in the SEC. This is going to be an NCAA tournament team. Mark Byington deserves all the credit in the world for what he's done. At the same time, though, we got to go ahead and talk about Kentucky because, listen, this isn't sky is falling. This isn't end of the world. I do think there have to be a couple concerns, though, going forward. One, first of all, injuries. I don't know if you want to say they're mounting or what, but just it's not good, right? Andrew Carr, one of your best players, is out for this game. He's been kind of dealing with a back injury all season. But here's my question, and this is where I would be concerned if I was a Kentucky fan. If Andrew Carr can't play in this game after a week off, what can you realistically expect to get from him the rest of the year? Because again, you're talking about a team that just had a week off heading into this game. Andrew Carr doesn't play. Now, listen, I understand that maybe, just maybe, with Tennessee on Tuesday night, That is a game in Knoxville. Like, I do understand this idea that maybe, just maybe, you thought maybe we can get through the Vandy game without Andrew Carr. Maybe we can get him healthy for Tennessee, but it doesn't change the fact that, again, off of essentially a bye week, we don't call it a bye week in basketball, but off of a bye week, this kid was not healthy. That is concerning. And if he is not healthy after a week off, you wonder how healthy he's going to be at any point the rest of the year. Second thing, Lamont Butler. Everybody else is speculating. I have no personal information. He does not look 100%. He played, really struggled, I think, for the first time in SEC play. 2 of 7 from the field, 6 turnovers. I believe the stat was he had 3 turnovers the entire season in SEC play coming into that game, had 6 turnovers in this game. And he doesn't look 100%. Remember, what was it? 2 or 3 games ago, Kentucky fans, I'm blanking on which one. Maybe it was I think it was the Texas A&M game. He went down with an elbow injury. He went down with a shoulder. I mean, he was just getting killed out there, and he just does not look like himself. But again, I think, to me, the single biggest issue is that you just don't know what you're getting from most of these guys on any given night. Now, I got to give credit where it's due. Otega-Oweh, I was a little critical of him early in the year, basically said, he scores a lot, but there are games where he is very inefficient. Well, he came to play on Saturday, and he really has been probably the most consistent player for Kentucky all year, has scored in double figures every game. He was by far the best player that they had on Saturday, 21 points in this game, 12 rebounds, another monster dunk, and he was very efficient in doing it. So I want to give credit to him. But it's like I keep saying with this team, you have to get consistency from more than one player if you want to win in this league, let alone if you want to win as the season goes on. Again, I know there's injuries, but, Jackson Robinson went from back-to-back 20-plus point games to 11 points against Alabama, 11 points against Vanderbilt. Kobe Brea was the best player maybe on the floor against Florida, has been very inconsistent going forward. And so you look at this team. By the way, Amari Williams, I've been critical of him. Kind of thought he got bullied a little bit in this game. I know the stats would maybe tell you, okay, he wasn't terrible, finished with 6 points, 5 rebounds. Kind of got bullied, didn't he? And so you look at this team, and I think it's a little frustrating if you're a Kentucky fan. You don't know what you're getting on any given night from anyone other than pretty much Otega-Oweh and Lamont Butler if he is in fact healthy. So I think it's frustrating if you're a Kentucky fan. And I think the other big thing that has emerged is that when you're away from Rupp Arena, or maybe the better way to put it is when you're in a true road environment, it does feel like, again, the offense kind of sputters, right? You look at the 4 road games that Kentucky has played this year, true road games, 66 points against Clemson on the road, 69 points against Georgia. Mississippi State, you did put up 95 at a win, 69 against Vandy. So this is a team that is top 5 in the country in scoring, that has scored over 100 points in 5 games this year. They've scored over 100. Well, guess what? In their 3 of their 4 road losses, they have scored under 70 points. And so, again, I think that's where you have to be concerned if you're a Wildcats fan, is just who are we getting consistency from? And more importantly, we're not getting it done on the road. Well, guess what? As I just told you, it doesn't get any easier. You still have at Tennessee. You still have at Ole Miss, which is one of the best defensive teams in college basketball. You still have at Alabama. Not sure if you checked. They're a national championship contender. And even Missouri. I mean, think about that. Those are the 4 remaining SEC road games that you have against 4 legitimate top 25 teams in Alabama, Missouri, Tennessee, and Ole Miss. I think Tennessee and Alabama are legitimate Final Four contenders. I think Alabama is a legitimate national championship contender. You're going to see 2 of the best defensive teams in college basketball in Tennessee and Ole Miss. Missouri, what they do better than anybody is force a million turnovers. So if you're a Kentucky fan, again, panic probably isn't the right word, but it's just, it does feel like there is a little bit of regression. And I do think it's a little bit frustrating. I even saw, and listen, again, I'm not here to criticize Mark Pope and say, he's overrated or he's this or he's that. But I do think it's kind of interesting. He even said after the game that he thought there was a little fatigue with this game, that's not a great sign if you're coming off of a week in which you did not play. And oh, by the way, you did play 8-9 guys. I understand Andrew Carr's hurt. I understand Kirk Kreis hurt. I didn't even mention that with the injuries. I think you need him as a backup point guard because when Lamont Butler was out early, the team struggled to run offense. Now, when he came back in, he struggled as well. But fatigue feels like a weird thing to say when you played pretty consistently, 8 guys in this game. But again, I just think it's that you need to get something consistent from somebody other than Otega Oweh. Lamont Butler is struggling right now. Kobe Brea and Jackson Robinson, you just don't know what you're going to get. Really quickly, I don't think there was really very many other noteworthy things from the world of college basketball on Saturday. There were some other scores. Duke did win at Wake Forest. We talked about, Cooper Flagg and all that a minute ago. North Carolina, by the way, survived in overtime against Boston College. I was going to do a segment on College Game Day going to North Carolina over Duke next week. We'll save that. We're going to North Carolina, Duke over Arkansas, Kentucky. I think it's a mistake, but I'll say this. ESPN kind of looked smart after Kentucky and Arkansas both took losses on Saturday. But I will wrap one last thing. I do think it's kind of interesting. So Dan Hurley has certainly been in the headlines over the last couple days, okay? So we talked a lot over the last couple shows about just Dan Hurley in general. You have the game on Tuesday of last week where he, of course, is caught yelling at a ref saying, quote, "Don't big time me," and I'm maybe paraphrasing, but I'm not off by much. "Don't big time me. I'm the best effing coach in the sport." He then does an interview with Adam Finkelstein from 24/7 where he basically says, essentially he pulled the Conor McGregor, "I want to take the time to apologize to absolutely nobody," and basically said, like, look, I am who I am. I'm going to keep being who I am. We've had success. And to paraphrase again, my players love me. My fans love me, whatever. And I will say, I thought he said something interesting. He said, the only thing I'm embarrassed about is I did think it was a little insulting to the other great coaches in college basketball. He said, I don't think I'm better than Tom Izzo. I don't think I'm better than Bill Self. I don't think I'm better than Sean Miller. He's like, I'm going to be embarrassed when I see Sean Miller on Saturday because of the behavior that I've had. Well, I bring it up because on Saturday, Dan Hurley certainly heard plenty from the fans. We'll get to the game against Xavier in a minute, but producer Matt, go ahead and play the clip of Xavier fans before the game. Probably should have let you know in case you're in the car or wherever with kids. There was going to be some profanity there, but guess what? If you go to games, you hear that stuff all the time. So I just bring it up because Dan Hurley certainly heard it from the fans. And so I think there's a couple interesting elements here. First of all, in terms of the game, Xavier did beat UConn. And Xavier gets the win. Credit Sean Miller, friend of the Aaron Torres pod. Love Sean. Happy for him. That's a team that has dealt with a lot of injuries. They get the 76-72 win in this game. And really we're the better team. From the UConn side of things, because this to me is the more interesting thing, is I had a lot of people hit me up that maybe weren't watching the game. Torres, what's wrong with the Huskies? It's like, well, it's hard for me as a UConn guy to really get too fired up. Now, I think there's issues with the team. To be clear, I don't think they are nearly as – they're not even close to the same stratosphere as last year. I don't think they're as good as 2 years ago where they did struggle in January, got hot in February, and then obviously it ultimately culminated in a national championship. But at the same time, it's hard for me to get too mad. One, you're on the road in league play. Xavier is a good team. I think what's also worth noting, Alex Garabin, your star player, one, he struggled. 4 of 13 from the field, 1 of 6 from 3, and he did foul out. UConn fans will tell you they got a terrible whistle. I tend to agree. It's hard to get too fired up. They were -7 in the free throw discrepancy, this after being doubled up by Baylor. So it was a little bit more even. But at the same time, they lose the game. But what stood out to me is, like, we also have to remember their best player, second best player really struggled in this game. And they're without a lottery pick in Liam McNeely. So Liam McNeely, as I said earlier with the Johni Broome segment, hurt his ankle about 3-4 weeks ago and has not been back since January 1st. Now, the good news is he's trending to be back. Dan Hurley said he's kind of doing stuff, but he would not play in this game. but it's at least possible that he could be back in the coming days. For UConn, an interesting little schedule stretch. They have DePaul at home. They do play at Marquette next Saturday night. So, you talk about a big Saturday in college hoops. Next weekend, we have Duke UNC. We have Kentucky hosting Arkansas, the John Calipari return. But we also have UConn and Marquette, the two of the better teams in the Big East, although I will say, as we talked about on Thursday's show, St. John's is awesome as well. But I want to go back to the Dan Hurley audio for a second, okay? And I want to go back to the discourse on Dan Hurley. So Dan Hurley, again, had last week, yells at the refs. It becomes a story. Heck, Stephen A. Smith was talking about it on First Take. And then he does the interview where he basically says, I apologize to absolutely nobody other than the other great coaches in the sport. Well, I was thinking about this because I saw that video. And as a matter of fact, producer Matt, in 1 second, I want you to play it again. I do want to remind people that are driving, there is some profanity, but play the video again from Xavier fans before the game. So as I watched that video, I was thinking this, is that like Dan Hurley, right? He's kind of a menace to society and everybody thinks it's the worst. How can he talk the way he talks and how can he act the way he acts? And listen, I said it after the game the other day. I did not love some of the behavior from Dan Hurley. I did not love the comments that he made towards the ref. But I'll also say this. You know what struck me? Xavier is a team that essentially has no real history with UConn. They've only been, this isn't UConn playing Syracuse or UConn playing St. John's or UConn playing whoever, Providence for sure. Teams, that UConn has been playing for decade upon decade upon decade. They just started playing Xavier when UConn returned to the Big East about 4 or 5 years ago, whatever it was. And so, there isn't a reason for Xavier fans to hate Dan Hurley other than that he is, if you are not a UConn fan, imminently hateable. But what I was thinking about was, I actually think this is a good thing for college basketball. All I hear is, this is terrible, he's awful, he's a jerk, he's this, he's that. And maybe that's true. But you know what else he is? He has become a villain in college basketball. And I think, transparently, that's what we need in this sport. I've been thinking it for a few weeks now. But since Coach K left, we really haven't had a villain in college basketball that everybody can rally around, everybody can hate, everybody can be sick of, everybody can think is obnoxious, everybody can whatever. Well, Dan Hurley is officially that guy because you have Xavier fans that don't like him. Every time that I post about him on social media, people go crazy. And so I just think that's a good thing for the sport of college basketball. I don't think it's a bad thing. I don't love the behavior. And listen, it did cost them a game, them being UConn, at some point earlier in the season when they played Memphis. But it isn't going to change the fact that college basketball kind of needs this. They kind of need a guy that everybody can rally around. And I'll also add this. I think Dan Hurley kind of embraces the villain role. Now, I don't think that he is purposely screaming at refs just to get attention. I think that's naturally who he is. You can argue, is it out of control? Is it not out of control? You can find videos of every coach in America yelling at refs. My buddy Mark Zanetto, who hosts the Lockdown UConn podcast, put out videos of Bill Self and Tom Izzo and Mark Pope doing the same. Mark Pope when he was at BYU. So you can find videos of everybody yelling at refs. But the thing that makes him a villain is he refuses to apologize for it. Just basically says, nope, this is who I am. Deal with it, whatever. So I bring it up because UConn loses. Listen, I don't think UConn's season really starts until they get Liam McNeely back. It is hopeful by this weekend when they do go to Marquette. But to me, this is it was a tough loss. UConn is clearly not the team that they've been. 14-6 overall, 6-3 in the Big East. But it doesn't change the fact that Dan Hurley certainly inspires a lot of anger from other fan bases, and I think that's a good thing. All right, I think that's it for this episode of the Air Torres Sports Podcast. Do think I'm going to get out of here. If you're not subscribed to the show, please make sure to do so. Apple, Spotify, Amazon Music, Google Music, wherever you get podcasts, please make sure that you are subscribed. Also, make sure you're subscribed to the YouTube channel. People, we're closing in on 50,000 subscribers. We cannot do it enough without your support. By the way, quick shout out to nobody who has put in roughly 30,000 consecutive, not roughly. I would say probably 20 straight comments. So So I appreciate his support. He says he needs a Bob Barker mic. I guess that's the thin mic. He also says, who is producer Matt's team? That is, of course, the Auburn Tigers, #1 team in the country. So we appreciate your support, nobody, and appreciate what you do. Appreciate everybody's support. If you're not subscribed, make sure to do so. Apple, Spotify, etc., Amazon Music, Google Music, and etc. Tell you what, we're going to go ahead and get out of here. By the way, if you're listening on podcast, we did do a little NFL off the top. But we'll go, and we'll be back probably on Tuesday. By the way, big guest on Monday night, so stay tuned. Shout out to Torn Craig. Shout out to Rachel, who hates my voice. Shout out to JJ Reddick, UF Ed. Unblock me, bro. I will be back. Aaron Torres pod later this week.